Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second day at the summit stage for CogX 2020. We've got a busy day ahead talking about philanthropy, ocean research, and how the pandemic will affect the Paris Agreement. But to start the day, we're going to answer this particular question. There is no limit to what we as women can accomplish. To take you through it is moderator Sara Vaughan, who is Global Chief Purpose and Sustainability Advisor to Marie Claire. Sara, over to you.
Thanks very much, Joy. Welcome, everyone, and I'm delighted to have some amazing guests on our panel. And first up, we're going to be talking to the very amazing Secretary General of the Commonwealth, and she really does embody this Michelle Obama quote, "There is no limit to what we as women can accomplish." And a bit of background, Michelle Obama's words reflect female empowerment and how important it is for the female voice to be heard. With FTSE boards and Parliament now having just over 30% of women involved, how can this change to reflect society even more? So welcome to the Secretary General. Thank you very much for being here and fitting us into your very busy
schedule. My great pleasure. My great pleasure.
And as I said, I mean, you really do embody this. I mean, I'll just give everyone a brief kind of synopsis of this, that the Secretary General was the youngest woman ever and the first ever Black woman to be appointed a QC. You were also the first Black woman to be appointed Deputy High Court Judge, Recorder and Master of Middle Temple. You were the first woman to hold the post of Attorney General since it was created in 1315. And you're also the first woman to hold the post of Secretary General of the Commonwealth, which is made up of 54 countries with a combined population of 2.4 billion, of which 60% is aged 29 or under. And as I know and I've witnessed, you are a passionate advocate for women and gender equality and also for halting climate change. So it's a bit like interviewing my absolute kind of heroine here, I have to say. So I'm not starstruck in the least. So Secretary General, what I just wanted to ask you a little bit about was, how did you actually start out in life?
Well, I am one of my parents' 12 only children. My mother and father had 7 boys and 5 girls. And what was quite extraordinary, I now realize, is both of them expected exactly the same from their sons as they did from their daughters. And I think probably my father was the greatest feminist I ever knew, because he gave no quarter to the girls. We were supposed to do absolutely everything and anything that the boys can do. So I think I was enormously lucky that I grew up believing that equality was normal. And I think it was only when I started to meet other people that and hear them say that girls weren't supposed to be engineers, or they weren't supposed to be, scientists, or they weren't supposed to be physicists, or they weren't supposed to be lawyers. I just thought, why not? And I realized it's because I had been brought up to believe that anything was possible. And I had 2 fiercely independent parents who were both in their own right quite amazing. So I think I just got lucky. I got lucky, and I was born into the right family at very difficult times, because if you can imagine, I was born in a tiny island in the Caribbean called Dominica. There's only 72,000 of us. So anytime you have a Dominican in the room, you have a large percentage of our population. So it was so unusual, because I was a Black child being brought up in the United Kingdom, and a woman. And those things were not good things to be when I was young, but it was how it was. And I think I just got lucky. I just got really lucky. And I think all of us need to have someone to believe in us. And I had 2 fantastic people who just believed in me.
And I was going to say, kind of, once you started your, career, were there any sort of key success factors to that? I mean, did you have a fantastic mentor or series of mentors throughout your career? How did that happen?
I think one of the things that was good in hindsight is that no one expected me to achieve anything. You know, when I came to the bar, there was 97% of the bar, I think, was male. 3% was female. The whole legal press was female, and only 0.1% were black. So I was in that 0.1% least likely to succeed. And the truth was, in those days, you were told there was nothing that was going to, and it wasn't even as if I was a cleaner, it was going to be better to be black and female. There was nothing that you could do which would your race and your gender would qualify you for. So it left you free to do anything. And I think the most important thing was not being afraid of failing. You know, so many of us thinking, oh, what's going to happen? I'm going to fail. I'm going to fail. So what? I think I was brought up to believe, and I do believe, that there is nothing to fear but fear, and there is no disgrace in having failed. The only disgrace is not having tried. So can you imagine when I just finished my degree, I was 20, and I was told that the chances of me succeeding were probably -0, that I wasn't Oxbridge, I wasn't white, I wasn't male, I didn't have rich parents, I didn't know anyone in the profession. So I was literally the least likely to succeed. But there was just a bit of me that said, okay, it might be a total disaster. I may not do anything, but I don't want to be 60 and looking back and thinking, wonder whether I could have been a barrister. I wonder whether I could have done that. So I thought I would try. And if I failed, so what? It was going to be satisfying to know that I'd tried. So I think the biggest thing I would say to all of us is have a go. You know, it's quite extraordinary. Women tend not to do things unless, if you look at an application, we say, there are 15 things on this application. Unless I can do 20, I won't apply. Men say there are 15 things on this application. I can do one. It's my job. It's a very different approach. So I think we need to just understand that every single one of us has a talent which is special to just us. Nobody else can do it. And you've just got to find that talent. You've got to hone it. And in my view, you then have to use it for the benefit of other people. Because if it's all about you, it doesn't work. And I think you get in your own way. But if you can decide that you want to do something and work out what your passion is and what you want to do and follow that passion, I think that's where success lies. But it can't really, for me, it can't really be about you. It's got to be doing stuff. There tends to be, in my view, two sort of people who want to be someone, and there are the people who want to do something. And I think I've always been in the latter category. I've always wanted to do something. And it started when I was really little. I remember watching Sharpsville on the television and saying to my father, why are people doing this? Why are they killing and shooting people who look like us? What have we done? You know, why do they hate us? And what can we do to stop it? And my father agreed with me. I thought, fabulous, my daddy agrees with me. And then he said something that I have never forgotten. He said, so what are you going to do about it? And I thought, me? I'm not even 5. And then he said something I've never forgotten. He said, and your point is, it starts with you. And all of us can do something to make it better. So even today, I can hear my father saying in my head, so what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about injustice? What are you going to do about unfairness? Because that's the thing that I think we have to realize. We can all do something.
I think those are such compelling words, and I think your father was absolutely spot on. And I think that segues absolutely beautifully into the work that you're doing for the Commonwealth, where I know you've been this extraordinary champion of gender equality. So it would be amazing just to give a bit of a, an overview of some of the programs that you've actually introduced in the Commonwealth.
Yeah. Well, as you know, we've got 2.4 billion people in our Commonwealth. And as you said, 60% of them are under the age of 30. So you've got about 1.8 billion people who are going to shape this world. And more than 50% of them, just a tiny bit over 50% of them, are women. So if we're looking at the wealth creation, the development of our Commonwealth and of our world, it's absolutely critically important that we use all our talent. So if we're not engaging women, if we're not including them, if we're not listening to them, if we're not pooling their genius to make our world better, then our world is a poorer place. And so we've been looking at how that whole empowerment agenda actually works, not just in terms of sophistry, but again, what can we do? And one of the biggest issues that absolutely disables women and girls is domestic violence. It's 1 in 3 women in the world who will be subjected to domestic violence. It's the greatest cause of morbidity. If this was like the coronavirus, the pandemic, we would be on the street saying, we have to stop this. And I knew from the work that we'd done while I was in the British government, that we can stop it if we choose, but it does take all of us coming together. So we've looked at this issue on every level. We're just about to launch our No More campaign, which we want to bring an end to domestic violence. And we know that there are ways and methods that we can use to bring that about. During the time when I was a minister in the UK government, I chaired the interministerial group. We reduced domestic violence by 64%. We saved £7.1 billion a year in terms of economic cost. And we improved the lives and made it safer for women and girls and men. So we have now tried to do that and share that knowledge from right across the Commonwealth. So we've been working on the economic cost of domestic violence, because what I knew when I did this work, that it was costing us about £3.1 billion, 27 billion pounds a year, and we can disaggregate that and make it less. And I think that that's what we are now doing in the Commonwealth. We have created a tool to look at the economic cost of domestic violence, and we're allowing all of our people to contribute. And if you look at what Seychelles has done, Seychelles is implementing this process. They've just changed their law in Seychelles, and many congratulations to them. We're looking at how we support women who are part of the small and medium-sized businesses. The small and medium-sized businesses are made up mainly of women and young people. So if we can accelerate the work that we are doing with SMEs, make it easier for them, this will make a huge difference. We know that there's a 19% advantage in Commonwealth countries trading with each other because we've got the same common law, the same common structures, and it's 19% cheaper, and we trade 20% more. So if we can encourage and enable that to happen, it's really going to make a difference. But there's so much I could talk about, because there's the
I know, and I think it's a perfect moment to introduce the rest of our incredible panel. So Brita, Joanna, Melinda, and Karim, welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning. It's lovely to have you with us. So I was going to start with you, Brita. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Women for Women, what you do, and also really like building on what the Secretary General was saying, what have the key success factors been like in your life and in your organisation?
Oh, thank you so much, Sara. It's absolutely wonderful. I'm so delighted to be part of this fantastic panel. And thank you so much, Secretary General, for the wonderful introduction to this. I kept nodding vigorously and because I so identify with what you said about being purpose-driven. As I was thinking about this panel and the kind of, I guess, key lessons that I think are perhaps at the heart is what has driven me and my work is definitely really embrace your purpose, find what you're passionate about, and then not be afraid to stand up for it. And, you said have a goal. And I think that's been a really important aspect for me in my work with Women for Women International, which is a global organization that supports women in countries affected by conflict in really the poorest and harshest environments, really. And what I have learned actually from working with women in countries like northern Nigeria, northern Iraq, Afghanistan, is actually very much embracing the unknown and embracing uncertainty and doing something even if you've never done it before. And definitely doing something that is outside the norm, which I think is very much what the Secretary General, what you were talking about, right? I mean, overcoming those barriers where you feel uncomfortable, deeply uncomfortable, because you're venturing into unknown territory. That is actually something that I have seen women all over the world do every day, which is so deeply inspirational. And I think in the context in which we all find ourselves right now, experiencing perhaps a crisis in a way that we haven't, but many of our sisters around the world actually regularly do, we can perhaps on the one hand have more compassion and understanding of what that means, but also take inspiration and guidance from the fact that we know that we are stronger than we think. And we know that we can actually go against the norm. And I guess the only other thing that has been so important to me and to my work and what I've seen being really important to women around the world is that you don't have to do it alone. This is the key thing. And whilst at the beginning you might feel you're on your own as you're going against the stream, very soon you will have others joining you, and you can also ask others to join you.
Yeah, thank you, Brita. And I want to bring Joanna in here, who runs and Joanna recently given an MBE. Congratulations for all your extraordinary work and your foundation of Blue Moon. So Joanna, love to hear from you also about, what are the nuggets and the wisdom and the success factors that have happened in your career? I mean, you're an extraordinary self-starter. I mean, your TEDx talk had me in tears, actually. It was just so moving. So love to hear a bit more, from you about, really, what are factors for success for us women?
I think there's, well, thank you very much for being so kind, by the way. I think it was this feeling when I was quite young. I had a feeling that, and I realised it quite early on. I was probably about 7 or 8 years old, and I just thought, if I'm not going to sort out the things I need to do, if I'm not going to work really hard, who do I expect to do it for me? So I realised quite early on that anything I wanted, I needed to find a way to do it myself. I had supportive parents who encouraged me. I always say, just do your best. But they also had jobs where my mum was a school dinner lady, my dad was a hospital porter, and then became a taxi, like a minicab driver. So they had quite manual jobs. And although they really encouraged us with our education, they didn't have this kind of network of people around them that could sort of advise us. So I just really used everything that I did have access to create as many opportunities as possible. So at school, I was quite, I'd sort of get my results back from something, see that it wasn't an A, for example, and then I'd go to the teacher and say, how do I get this to an A? And I kind of had in my mind that I had to get really good grades, because really good grades meant you went on to a good university. Obviously, when my parents came over, my dad came over to England from Ghana in 1974. And so there was this expectation that all of his children would go to university. So that was at least one of the things that I would work towards. So I thought, right, I've got to use my education as much as possible to get myself to university, because after university, you're able to get a better job. which means then that you can have a much better life, and would have a job that paid better. So then I used school, and then once sort of school had finished, I went to the careers advisor and said, so I've got the grades at GCSE level, I'm pushing now for A levels, what do I need to do so that once I finish university I can get a good job? And she sort of mentioned work experience, and then helped me through CV writing and letter writing. And I mean, I really was someone that kind of was much more can do. So I remember even when I was applying for work experience, it was back in the day when you still wrote letters. It wasn't this emails that we have now. We were posting letters. And but I didn't have the money to buy all the magazines to get all the addresses to post. So I just sat on the floor with my notepad in our local newsagents and just took all the magazines off the shelf and wrote down the addresses, and then went. And I remember the shopkeeper going, are you okay sitting down there? Because I was there probably a couple of hours just writing down these addresses and not actually buying any magazines. And it was just so that I could write letters to them and ask for work experience. And I remember going back into my careers advisor with this A4 sheet of paper, and she went, wow, are we writing to all of them? And I was like, yeah, all of them. And then she helped me write some letters. And then again, I guess I'm sharing that because I could have gone, how am I going to get the addresses? I don't have any money, and made that a barrier. But actually, I just found a way to get the addresses and to post them. And then when I got the work experience, I was a student that used to get educational maintenance allowance, and I didn't. When you were on half term, you didn't get that, which meant it was really difficult for me to go to work experience. So once I'd finally got a yes after about 70 letters of no, I had to end up walking to my work experience. So I lived in Battersea, and my work experience was in Waterloo, and one was in Oxford Circus, and I would just walk there and back because I didn't have the money to get on the bus. But I thought, now I've finally been given the opportunity, I don't want to miss it. So I think I've just always realised that you can constantly think of reasons why you can't do stuff. But I wasn't probably one of those people. I always thought, no, if I've been given an opportunity, what do I now need to do to make sure that I'm the best at it, or I can get through it? And I wasn't going to let not being able to travel on a bus, for example, stop me getting there. And I think I really loved what was said earlier around I wrote it down, the greatest fear is fear. And I think actually that's a really good point, Secretary General, because I've always told myself you're going to be nervous, it's going to be scary, you're going to be in rooms with people that you're not familiar with, or that you haven't maybe met before, but just go in and just do it anyway. Just be scared and do it anyway. And I always used to think that, and I used to kind of go, what's the worst that can happen? Like, it's really, what's the worst? And I thought, if you mess up, you'll just go back to being the poor kid that you were, and that's not much to lose. So I was fine. I just used that.
Amazing and so inspiring. And now I'm going to introduce everyone to Karim, who is welcome, Karim. Thank you for being here. Who is a real feminist and champion of equal opportunities, and really embodies the Hebrew movement. So thank you for being with us. So Karim, please tell us a little. I mean, you place very senior women in roles, particularly in the digital and tech sector. So please tell us about some of the key success factors that you've noticed about getting women into those positions.
Yeah, but given that everybody's, first of all, it's great to be the only male on the panel. I'm quite humble about all the achievements around the table here. So thank you so much for having me, and hopefully I can represent a supporting view from the male contingency. Given that everyone's sharing some personal stories, my mom's has always been pretty amazing. We lived in Beirut. We grew up through the Civil War, and we immigrated to Canada. And it was really sort of my mom that kind of pushed us to kind of move. And I remember when I was getting a bit older and deciding what to do in my sort of kicking off my career, she's the one that pushed me to go be based in London and sort of work in Africa for 3 years. And so she's been an incredible influence to me, and sort of realized my potential and helped me through that. And so that kind of led me to what I do today. I work for Egon Zehnder. Obviously, we place senior execs around the world. And our real ethos is around helping leaders to to kind of create a better world. And we fundamentally believe in that. And at the heart of that, of course, is diversity and the women agenda. And just a couple of reflections. In a way, if you reflect back to 10 years ago, there was a lot of lip service of actually placing women across these senior exec roles. But I would say over the last 5 years, we've seen a significant improvement of placing women on boards. I mean, even for us, over the last year, 45% of all placements have been women. But the real issue, and it's a very depressing story still, is women on the exec level, where we don't see enough. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I mean, I think the first is, I've read a study from Exec Pipeline, which is a great sort of organization that does talent, focused on women, but only 10% of women own P&L roles. And so most women that get promoted to the exec C-suite are usually through a more narrow function like marketing or HR or corporate comms.
Isn't it right? I saw a figure which was said that 2/3 of the women that are in FTSE roles are in HR roles, for instance.
Yeah, which causes a real, I mean, it's amazing to have to kind of bring up that ratio on the exec level, but succession planning to CEO becomes a real issue. And if you look at the FTSE 100 today, a few years ago we had 7 women as CEO, and today we only have 4. You look at the top 350, only 4% are women. So there's a real massive issue. And I think the only way to solve it is going to be through a joint effort from leaders to, and I'm going to say something quite controversial. I think we have enough mentorship. There is enough desire to mentor. The real challenge in sponsorship, and sponsorship for me is about making really tough decisions, opening up doors, putting a stake, and taking risks and moving people along. And I'll just close with one, and I'm sure we'll discuss this later on, but one great example of a CEO is a guy called Gilbert Gostin. He runs Firmenich, which is a flavor and fragrance company. It's 100,000 employees, 100 countries. And on his 3rd year of becoming CEO, he went to the board and said, I want you to give me a brown envelope. And in that envelope, I'm going to decide how much money to put in. So by the end of the year, we're going to have equal pay across all genders. And he did it. And I spoke to him last night just to kind of get his views. And he said, Karim, in July, so the next few weeks, I'm going to have 50-50 exec on my executive team. So you need people to really take a step up and sponsor a lot more.
Great. Over to you, Melinda. So lovely to have you with us. So please tell us a little bit about yourself and what the key success factors have been for you in your career.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm really, really honored to be on this panel, and just such inspiring stories, and especially from the Secretary General. Just thank you so much for everything that you're doing. And I really can resonate or relate to so much of what has already been said. I've had it maybe from a slightly different angle as, in the tech industry for, over 20 years in leadership positions, and, leading the UK and Ireland for my company right now. I think I really relate to what Karim said. I completely agree relative to mentorship versus sponsorship. And it was a point that I was going to make around, we really need to think about beyond mentorship. And when women are not in the room, who is standing up for them and putting them forward, making recommendations for people for different roles, and really encouraging women to take that leap. I absolutely agree with what was said earlier around a woman will look at the list of requirements and pull herself out versus going for it. And we really need to, and something in my own career that has really helped me is I would look at a potential opportunity and say, wow, that is something I'm very driven by or interested in. It has a lot of, fits my values and goals, and where I think I can make a difference, but I don't know that I'm qualified for that role. And without the people really encouraging me, and then also putting me forward in those closed door conversations where a lot of decisions are still made, I maybe wouldn't have taken that leap. The other point I'll make, just from a tech industry, which, it continues to be challenged with bringing women into the business. It's a board level conversation, and I'm seeing it more and more across organizations in the tech industry, where from the top down, it is a top 3, 4, 5 business objective diversity and inclusion with metrics and goals that have teeth around compensation, around performance, and it has to be driven top down. And I do think we're making a difference in that way, where every hiring manager, needs to have the lens of diversity and inclusion with the purpose of making a difference in the business. Because I think we've all seen the studies, the metrics, the information that having a more diverse leadership, executive leadership and board makes for a more successful organization. And so,
yeah, and I was about to relate to that, Melinda, because I mean, there's, even Harvard published in 2013 a gender report, which said that business teams with an equal number of women and men perform incrementally better in terms of sales and profits than male-dominated teams. So, we're looking at, the fact that, in the FTSE, we have less than, we're still bordering at 30%, in Parliament and in the FTSE. So, Secretary General, I mean, how do we get more of the right women in Parliament? I mean, I'd love to also explore the example of Rwanda here. Yeah. I mean, as we know, Rwanda had this horrific genocide and war. I mean, just tragic. And is now one of only 3 countries in the world to have gender parity. So, how did that happen? What is the model for success?
I think it was by political will and decision, because Rwanda now has 67% of the government ministers are women. And the cabinet is now just over 50%, I think it's about 51% in Rwanda that are women. And the president, Kagame, says that he made a decision based solely on talent and ability. And the women were talented and the women had real ability. And look at how quickly that has advanced. So the programs that we are looking at in the Commonwealth is how do we support the whole electoral process. We did a specific program on how you encourage women to come into politics and compete, because women find it incredibly difficult going to elections. So we produced data on that. We've produced toolkits to help our member states. We've got most of our countries across the Commonwealth have got the 30%. They've got about 25% in many countries too, but we know that we need to get better. So it's not just saying it, it's doing it. It's disaggregating the factors that get in women's way to stop them coming forward and then moving them out. It's by monitoring, it's by reflecting, and it's by sharing good practice. So one of the fantastic things that we have in the Commonwealth is that we have big ones, small ones, island states, landlocked states, everything you like, but we pool the information and the data. We created a Commonwealth Innovation Hub. On that Innovation Hub, we are now able to disaggregate each country's data to enable them to see how well they are doing in relation to gender parity and equality. We're looking at the details in relation to trade. So for example, if you were right, if you look at what happened after the 2008 financial crisis, all the information that we culled from that was that those companies who had a 50-50 parity did so much better than those who had either predominantly men or women. That 50-50 was absolutely right. And then when we looked at how economies are advancing, it's those who invest in our human capital. So we're making the economic case for inclusion. It's the smart thing to do. I sometimes say to them, do you want to get really rich, really obscenely, disgustingly rich? Then be fair. Because that's the only way you're going to be rolling in dosh. So it's the smart thing to do. It is smart to include all of the genders. It's smart to include all the races. It's smart to include all the religions, because if you don't, you are going to be worse off. And we now have the empirical data to prove it. I'm a lawyer, okay? So I say, give me the evidence. When we're looking at domestic violence, I say, give me the evidence, follow the money. The money is invest in people. The money is, how do I get really rich? I do a people-centered, environmentally regenerative approach, and we will then be sustainable and thrive. I think the big message is inequality is inefficient, ineffective. It costs you too much money and you will never get rich. And if that's the language people need to hear, because that's what they value, money, well, there's loads of money inequality and there's none in sustainable form if you're unjust. That's the truth, folks. Look at the data.
Yeah, well said, Secretary General. And I know you have to leave us very shortly to go to a meeting. So thank you very much
Please go on to our website. It's thecommonwealth.org. Look at all the things that we're doing on climate change, on gender equality, on getting people into Parliament, on supporting them. All of that is only possible if we collaborate. I think we're in a very dark place right now, and there is no space for those of us who want a better world to be silent. If we're silent, then we will never get the change we need. And can I just say, I'm so tired of having to say the same things. I thought that when I was 5, I would never see what we've just seen on our screens, with a policeman putting his foot on the neck of a black man until he stops breathing. I thought those days were over. They're only going to be over if all of us, look at us, we are from all different size, and this is what beauty looks like. It's who we are, we're human, but I think we have to fight for this and never think it's over, because those of us who thought we'd fought and won, we were wrong. So we have to keep on fighting, keep on raising this, and keep on seeing the beauty that's in all of our faces, male, female, rich, poor, because it's going to take all of us. And if we're not all free, then none of us are free. So thank you for participating in this. Thank you all for being fabulous. I'm so glad we had a great feminist man on the panel with us, because all of us know that feminist men are really great. And having been in a family of 7 boys and a fabulous father, can I tell you, I grew up thinking men were magnificent. So we just need to get the good ones and don't kiss any more frogs.
Thank you for those very wise words. And yes, I really feel it is, an opportunity for us to all create better together. And looking ahead, and I mean, Joanna, in your role, I mean, you have companies coming to you specifically wanting to recruit women and diversity within their organizations. I mean, are you seeing more of those companies coming? Are there more of those requests? Are people waking up to the fact that it makes commercial sense to have much more diversity in their organizations?
I think I could echo actually some of the comments that have been made earlier, because yes, we certainly do get a lot of businesses that are keen to diversify their boards, and not just from a gender perspective, but also ethnicity, disability, etc. But I do think that the business case, although is everywhere, there are so many reports that back this up, that say, diverse businesses and organizations will always thrive and will commercially be much more successful. But I think that itself hasn't been compelling enough, because we have had for a long time lots of people speaking to that topic but not actually doing anything about it and paying lip service to it. I think what I'm encouraging businesses to do at the moment is to understand how it specifically benefits their type of business, because I think that is what they're finding more convincing, as opposed to the general argument that a more diverse organization is a more commercially successful organization. So we're quite keen to try and identify how they as a business can impact their bottom line by that diversity, so that they see the business and commercial case for it, but also at the same time trying to change hearts and minds so that they understand that actually all these barriers that we put in place, they don't need to be there. I often say we need to redefine the way that we attract our talent, the way that we recruit our talent, the way we retain them, and how we promote and develop them. I think a key word I always use is equity, and what is it that everybody needs to be successful. And it's all very well saying, you know, we're an equal opportunities employer, but actually if I've made my website inaccessible, then someone who is disabled, for example, won't be able to apply for jobs via the website. So it's not, you can't call yourself as an equal opportunity if you haven't actually worked out, well, what makes everything equal for every individual. I think thinking about language, images, and then and all of that comes with the attraction piece. But where are you looking for this talent? There's lots of organisations that say, we've looked and we couldn't find any. I don't think they've looked very well. And there is plenty of talent out there, in whether it's female talent, disabled talent, those that are from the LGBT community, ethnic minority. There is tons and tons, and there are so many organisations that have created lists, awards, membership organisations, interest groups where you could actually tap into and find much more, if you like, open ways of finding your talent. And then one thing I think businesses have asked me a lot in especially in response to some of the things that have gone on in America recently, and the protests, is how they've sort of assumed what they think is needed to empower, for example, their Black employees, rather than ask the question. And I think sometimes if you ask people what it is that they need to be successful, they'll tell you what their barriers were when you try to recruit them. They'll tell you what makes it feel unequal in the workplace. They'll explain to you those things quite openly. And I think it's about being comfortable having some uncomfortable conversations, and realizing that actually, if you want to know how to make a more inclusive environment, just ask the people in the environment what it is like, and stop expecting or sort of talking about culture as if it's this thing that kind of hangs around at the top of us. We're creating the culture. It's our attitudes, our behaviors. They're the things that are creating the culture. So our choices around the way we speak to each other, the way that we create an environment where everyone, irrespective of their background, that we're just looking at talents and skill set. If we start to create an environment where that is all we're looking at, and we're not searching for that thing that we can find ourselves familiar with in you, or whether or not you would fit in with what I like doing, and actually just look at, well, what do we need? What skills do we need? And who can bring those skills? I think until we start creating culture like that, we could have as many processes and as many sort of quotas and commitments and charters from organisations, and still not see the change that we need to. So I think it takes for us to actually dig a bit deeper, look at what, from a commercial perspective, what's going to convince the sort of powers that be to sponsor our behaviours, our inclusive behaviours, but equally to ask the people within our workspace, what is it that they need to be successful?
Thank you very much, Secretary General, because I know you've got to leave. Thank you very much. It's been
thank you. And thank you everyone for being with me during this time. You've been fabulous. And I think the world's a safer place because you're all in it. So
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll continue. I think we haven't got long left. So I really kind of quick fire question for each of you, which is, what can we do to get more diversity into your sphere of work? So Karim, what can we do to get more women into kind of digital and technology C-suites?
I go back to that point, right? It's about much more sponsorship, and it's a joint effort. So I think it's all leaders need to work together. This is not going to be just solved by great women leaders sponsoring other great women leaders. It's about a collective approach by all of us and making it sort of a goal across the organization. Someone mentioned the results also are much greater when we create much more diverse team. And the last thing I would say is, we've done quite a bit of work on identifying where leadership goes in the future. And it's really shifted from demand and control to CEOs or leaders that are much more humble and empathetic. And if you think about what's happening today in the times of crisis, you have to manage and lead virtually. So some of these qualities are actually even more inherent. I'm going to be quite stereotypical, but probably more in women than men. And so it's really important to have that balance between performance and the empathy. So the stage is set. I mean, we have an amazing opportunity to get great leaders across all levels to change the world. And I think this is, unfortunately, with the crisis, it's made it happen, but I think we can leverage that.
Brita, we're cruising close to time, but what's the one thing that you want to see or would like to have implemented?
I mean, just building on what Karim said, which I completely agree with, for me, it's about making space. You have space and you can make space, right? And you can bring others up. And I think there's often this disadvantage that you're being asked to have experience when you come into something, but how do you get experience if you're never given the opportunity to gain that experience? So, take some risks and give people opportunities.
And Melinda, how about yourself?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said so far, especially, the comments Karim made. I would just think of maybe this time with the pandemic as an opportunity to shift around diversity. Everyone's working from home. The whole concept of being present or having to be in the office is changed. We have the technology that broadens our ability to talk to so many different types of candidates. That let's leverage this time to take advantage of it and have the pandemic perhaps be an equalizer of giving people the opportunity to pursue different.
Amazing. And Joanna, last word on this one before Joy pops in and closes us down.
I was just going to say, just to question your processes. Why do you do things the way that you currently do them? If they keep eliminating and excluding certain groups, what can you do to change them to make sure that you make all of your processes as inclusive as possible? Just keep questioning, why do we do things this way if it excludes people?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much to everyone. That was just amazing. We could continue this discussion all day, but sadly Joy has come back, and that's our sign for us to leave. But bless you, thank you, and to be continued.
Yeah. Thank you, Sara, and
thank you very
everybody.
much.
Fascinating discussion of the pandemic as a possible great equalizer. We're going to close down this session, but if you'd like to stay with the summit stage, we have got another talk opening up in just a couple of minutes on the resilience of global supply chains. Do come back. Thanks ever so much.
Want access to more CogX videos? Subscribe now for free at cogx.co.